I'm JohnBerry555 and today I'm continuing my series of Gilligan's Island retro reviews with Season 1, Episode 6, President Gilligan. So this episode originally aired on October 31st, 1964, only a few days before the November 3rd, 1964 presidential election. So it's very likely they knew this episode was going to be coming out near that episode and therefore decided to make an election day themed episode. So the premise of this episode is that they decide to hold an election because basically the skipper and professor are digging a well. No, they want fresh water. Meanwhile, Mr. Howell wants to basically build and Gilligan's stuck between them. And argument ensues and they decide, you know what, let's have an election to decide who's going to lead us. We get to see some of the campaigning, Mr. Howell trying to bribe people, yada yada yada. The skipper knowing that he can threaten Gilligan but not everyone else. And it ends up what's happening is Gilligan wins because only two people vote for the skipper, that being the skipper and the professor, and two people vote for Mr. Howell, that being Mr. Howell and Ginger. Marianne, Mrs. Howell, and Gilligan all vote for Gilligan. And Gilligan likely voted for himself because he didn't want to choose between the skipper and Mr. Howell, knowing his personality. And then, so he becomes president, but no one wants to do anything now. Which I think is kind of funny because, Gilligan's like, hey, we gotta dig this well we've been wanting to dig. And the people who started digging the well no longer are interested in digging the well because they're doing other stuff now. Lots of hijinks ensue, and eventually, Gilligan just starts digging the well himself. And he does hit water, right when he's yelling, I quit, because everyone's yelling at him. And Mr. Howell is trying to impeach him for accepting a bribe from Mr. Howell. Yeah, that happened-ish. So yeah, that all goes down, and at the end, well, Gilligan says, okay, now that we got a well, let's build an observation tower, a signal tower. And actually, if I remember correctly, a future episode, we do see that tower. But of course, this episode is never mentioned again that Gilligan was elected president to lead the castaways on the island. Though technically, the skipper is, under maritime law, the actual leader because it's his responsibility to keep them all safe while awaiting rescue. But let's be real. They do effectively end up running themselves as basically a collective commune. Let's be real when you watch it. Now, Gilligan's Island also has no sense of, continuity, but the fact is as you watch the episode, and we actually do kind of see this later on in the television movie, that how they started living on the island is very different than how they lived in society. Much more, sharing, holding things in common, very left-wing, if you will. Still Mr. Howard's still a capitalist. We're not even at that point in the series yet, and he never changes that part. But the point I really do want to convey is the fact that, they've become basically, let's just quote to Monty Python, an autonomous collective. And that scene from Monty Python is really good. I should really talk about Monty Python and really all of them someday. And I just might do that. But overall good fun episode with some good fun gags. And while this episode is not really called back to later, that lookout tower they mentioned is apparently shown again in a later episode. And the idea of, one of the castaways becoming a leader and somehow ends up being Gilligan does happen in future episodes. So I do think some of the other ones have a little bit more fun with it than this one does. But like I said, still a good episode overall, and I would love to hear your thoughts on it, so you can let me know in the comment section down below. Thank you for watching my latest retro review. I do hope you enjoyed it, and if you did, please be sure to give this video a like. Also, consider subscribing to my channel if you haven't done so already, and I hope to see you for my very next video.